I'm officially a member.
Yeah, welcome,
Member of the
welcome.
Ginger Cowboy Club, apparently.
All right, so in honor of Tiffany's welcome back to Meta Mondays. We're going to talk about rooms today. Um, I'm sure a lot of y'all have used rooms before, but we're going to kind of dive deep into how we can utilize them further for like interior coordination as well as just model coordination. So, um, rooms are like a system family. So like you can't make a family out of a room. Like and the room exists in kind of two forms. There's the room itself, which is what I'm selecting now. It's got the crosshairs and this, so I can like move the room out of the space into other places if I needed to move the room, or I can kind of move the crosshairs or whatever. Then there's the tag that's associated to that room. So in this case, like I'm tagging that to show it, but then in here, the thing that is actually the data that's associated with the tag is part of the room. And so with the room, you can have it gives you an area, it gives you a perimeter, it gives you like an unbounded height. So that way you can begin to understand like some of the takeoffs that we could begin to start using for this. And this is a really geared toward interiors, but it's the same kind of concept. So for architecture. So what the Revit does a lot of times is it's just going to the finished face. If we wanted to calculate things that were beyond the finished face that accounted for like the stud cavity and things like that, we would need to make an area plan and use areas because we have a little bit more control of that. Rooms are really bound by two things, either a wall um, or a room separator line. And so a room separator line is under the architecture tab. It's a like a green line. These are turned off right now, but they're just lines that can help. Like if you have an open floor plan and you're kind of splitting it into here's the bar, here's the lounge, but they're never, it's like all one big open space. You can use a room separator line to separate the rooms, but it is not, you don't have to use a wall. But in a wall has a property that's called a room bounding checkbox. And so if I uncheck that, the room would then want to go into other rooms to merge those things. And then you'd have these like unplaced rooms errors. Um, so if I do this, it's going to do that. And then if you click on this, you see that that room then grew into that space. Okay. Now, if I come back here and just recheck that, then the room is then defined by that. Okay. Now, I know sometimes we use wall openings, which is a tool here where you can just create a wall opening like a cased opening, but a wall opening in Revit is viewed as a like open wall. So it does not actually have a barrier, where if you notice the door actually creates a barrier to where you're like, hey, that's you'd have to pass through this to go through into this room. So Revit views that as like a separate barrier than a wall opening. So sometimes if we're using this, like that is a door opening, it is not defining a room. So in a sense, like this patio would merge with this space out here, and it would be viewed as one big space. Um, but when within the room is this where I was talking to Audrey and Rebecca about when we create a room finish schedule, is we can add project parameters to rooms, and that's we can talk about this with shared parameters that are um, we can add to each project so that they're the same parameter that we look at. So that way, when we combine multiple buildings into one, it's all in like one, hey, this is the ceiling finish for all these rooms. This is the floor finish. But what's really helpful is I can say like this is wood, um, and then wall finish would be like PT1. I can say floor finish is wood. I can say ceiling finish is gypsum wallboard 1, and I can start like filling out this whole uh, the parameters for the room as I go through and plan. Now, in CAD or in previous ways we've done it, it's like you're creating a legend that's like a schedule, um, but it's creating it's separate from what you can see. So the data is not connecting itself. And the reason why this is really cool is that when I start coming here and this is a room schedule that I created, and which is, let me move this out the way. If I go to view schedules, schedules and quantities, and then I can come down to rooms and I can create a room schedule, and then I can create a understanding of what are these different um, parameters that we have. Now, if you notice, there are a ceiling finish project parameter and there's a ceiling finish built-in parameter. Now, uh, we we want to have ones that are the same and that are like we're using the same type of parameter. So I can't delete this ceiling finish that is the built-in parameter. I can delete the project parameter. And the reason why we have them is just to create, in our sense, with the way that Revit wants to do it is they're putting ceiling finish down here, and floor finish. And then sometimes they put them up here where there's an identity data and the built-in parameter is allowing us to kind of have this information. So as we fill this out, if I go back to my room schedule, I can come down to private dining. It's here, and there's your PT1. And so then I can start like, you can either fill it out from the room schedule or you can fill it out from the building. But in terms of your coordination, when you're like on a coordination call and you're talking to a client or you're talking to an engineer and they're like, what is this room? What are the finishes of that room? You can come in here and say like, oh, well, I'm in the reception hall. Well, it has this finish, it has this finish, and it has this finish. And so we can embed a bunch of that information into that room. And then you can allow yourself to be able to say like, well, what is the occupancy of that room? Well, I know that you have 882 square feet in a reception hall. That's probably an assembly space, so that's standing room only, kind of thing. So like you can begin to start calculating things from just the raw data that the building's giving you. So it's a really great way to work through like, hey, I'm putting all this data into it, but then I can also use that data to then extract things out of it. So when I go to the schedule, one of the things that we can add in here is the area, and the area is not shown. So I can then start putting in here like, hey, here's my area, and then I can say there's floor finish, and let's just do um, so that's wall finish, floor finish. I'm just showing you this for the purpose of, forgive me, Audrey, I will not save this. I'm just kind of populating this for the purpose of the example. So one of the things that we get into is allowances, and we need to understand like, well, I have like this much tile, I have this much like wood flooring. This is a great way where you can start to filter out to say like, hey, if my floor finish equals tile, show me that. Okay. And then from that, you can then calculate your total area of all your tile spaces. You don't have to go through and calculate it. You can let the computer do that for you. So you can set up filters within your room schedule to help you understand what the allowances is telling you. And so you can do the same with wall finish. We can do the same with ceiling finish, and we can be better at understanding what the contractor is quantifying to have a better understanding of, is that in line with the price, or are they like overestimating how much tile we're going to use? Or especially when we get into like higher end tile versus like kitchen tile, like if it's terracotta and it's just like that red kitchen tile that we're using, like that's bottom dollar. But if we get into like, hey, that's $30 a square foot porcelain tile, that's a custom finish, like it would be great to know like those are two different understandings of tile. So it's just a great way to then get into like, okay, well, what are those things telling us which tile is that, which just goes back to a finish legend. But this really helps us understand, like, we can embed a bunch of finish data, occupancy data, area data into our buildings through rooms. And one of the things that we use in multifamily is we'll use the room to calculate a unit that we don't necessarily have the unit there. And so it's a great way to like kind of tag and use things that we're like, hey, this is an understanding of a space, but we can put a bunch of data into that and say like, you know, Prospect Park was a great example, was we were using rooms as units to then create the matrix of all the different unit types and the project matrix of like, this is how many 2 bedrooms, how many 1 bedrooms you have, and using the room schedule and embedding information into that to then say like, hey, this is essentially what you're looking for, but we're using a system family of a room to be able to calculate that information without having to put a bunch of units in and make sure that they all fit and then pull that unit data out and all that. So rooms are really cool and really valuable for that space. Getting into CA, when we go to, let's go to export PDF, is, let's see, where's the button? Revit allows you to export your, from Bluebeam to, you can export your rooms as spaces into Bluebeam. And the reason why that's really cool is that when we're doing a CA project or we're doing a site visit and we need to create a site report of all these spaces that we're going into, and you're taking tons and tons of pictures and you're trying to then filter out like what the picture is associated with what room, what is in that room, and then what needs to be done further, is we can then export the PDF to capture the rooms as spaces in Bluebeam. And then that allows us, when we put something in the space in the floor plan on the PDF, it'll like create the spreadsheet for us to be like, in all these spaces, you have these items to look at. And it saves a whole bunch of time when you're doing a huge punch list to be like, all right, I'm in the reception hall. In the reception hall, I need you to look at the flooring. I need you to retouch up the paint in these areas. And when you start dropping items in like from your tool chest, you can like be like, touch up paint, check base finish, like the things that we go through with the punch list, those can be easily put into a space in Bluebeam because of the rooms that are set up in Revit. So you don't have to go through and be like, oh, well, here's a dump list of everything in Bluebeam session, and it really doesn't have an association of where the space is. It allows us to kind of put a lot of that information into specific pieces, and then we can break that out into an export and be like, here's like the list and associated with a floor plan. And then they can really easily understand like, this is what you need to do to finish the project, or this is what I saw on my site visit, and these are the places that I saw. And then you can add images from that to your report, and Bob's your uncle. So rooms are really cool. They're very versatile. There are some downfalls to the room separator lines for anyone that has worked in multifamily where were using groups. We were using a room separator to define the exterior of the unit, so as we don't do the exterior walls in some units. But the ability for Revit to use room separator lines can make wall joins problematic. So if you have a room separator line on top of a wall, sometimes the joins don't like to work. And so if you ever run into that, sometimes you may need to turn your room separator lines on to see if that's what's causing a wall join issue, because it's kind of like there's a wall on top of a wall, but the room separator line is acting like a wall, even though it's just a line. So those are some of the pitfalls of using room separator lines and how you can utilize rooms within Revit. Does anyone have any sort of comments, questions about rooms, problems that they run into, or just want to talk about how cool Revit is?
Revit really is amazing. and cool. Can it spit out an Excel spreadsheet of all the rooms?
Yes, so the room separator, the room schedule, we can, if you needed to create an Excel spreadsheet of that, you can do an export and you come all the way down to the bottom and you do a report and you can do a room area report, or you can just export the whole schedule. And if you do that, it'll pop this out and it'll give you a CSV,
Hmm.
which is essentially a comma delimited file. And then you can open that up in Excel and then save it as a XLSX. Um, so, um, yeah, pretty much anything that is a schedule, we can export to Excel, and then you can use it that way if it's a little bit easier for you to manipulate in Excel or to kind of view and look at. Um, but yeah, like you can do the same like filtering in Excel, like creating a table and saying like, show me all the tile rooms and show me all the wood floor rooms kind of thing. So uh, this is kind of gets into like why you would want to create a master room schedule and then have these separate schedules of, hey, I like to look at, I want to be able to filter this or have a working schedule. That's like, I like to be able to manipulate what I'm seeing, but then I have an overall master room schedule that I don't manipulate.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Kurt, I was going to say, can we walk them through like the different components of a room? So if you place a room, you get a room reference, you get a room fill, um, you also have a room tag. And I was also going to ask if we could show them where we turn off room separator lines and visual graphics, since we just talked about that.
Yeah.
I think that'd be helpful too.
So yeah, like if you were to place a room, you would go to architecture and go to room, and you see that it has the RM. So if you were to do that, and then you can click uh, this, and then you can see when you do that, it'll pop up like where have rooms been placed. And so you can see here, there's not a room here, there's not a room out here, but you see that here it's like finding a boundary. When you come out to the porch out here, there is no boundary. So if I place this, it's just going to give me a generic, this is what I think the room is out here, but it is not a placed room, where this is a truly placed room. And in the room schedule, you can see here there's this like not placed area where sometimes it is placed. And so that kind of allows you to kind of see what you can do and what you like, what's there and what's not there. Now, this is point clear building one, and we've talked about phasing, and phasing is difficult with rooms because we have rooms that are there for the demo plan, and then we have rooms that are there for the new construction plan. And when I demolish a wall and it creates a new room, then there's like two rooms on top of each other. That's kind of getting convoluted and like it's a specific use case, but it's a great example of like, hey, understand how you're placing this thing so that way you can be able to say like, okay, making sure that when you place it, it is actually has the boundary defined, or you're just kind of using it as a tag. To that point, we have different data points to use with the tag. So if I were to say like, hey, we just want to be able to show the room name, or we want to show the room name with the area. And so this is pulling the data out of the room and putting it into the tag. So if I were to say like, hey, I've got a floor plan and I need to just tag all the rooms and I need to understand the areas, I can easily do tag all room plus room area, and then it create that. So one of the things that we run into with multifamily is we have the room, the unit number, or the unit, like a unit 2AB. Well, then we want to know the area. And then sometimes we want to be able to say this is a 2 bedroom, or we want to know the like overall dimensions that Revit can't necessarily say it's a 12 by 15 room. We have to input that for them. And then sometimes we need to put it like what unit number it's going to be, like it's unit 302, and or we need to put signature or capstones label of what they call it. So there's a lot of information that we can say, hey, we can embed data into this room, but we don't necessarily have to display that information to them. So sometimes it's like we have our own internal naming convention, and then we have their naming convention of what they want to display. And so a lot of times you can put into that information, and then we can just turn the tags on or off or flex between those things. So a lot of it's just like there's data to be mined, and we can be able to mine that data out of it as best as we can, and that all you're having to do is just be like turn them on, turn them off, and flip between it. Now, Joe mentioned the room separator lines. So for all of y'all that participated in Thursday's call, we would go, in this case, I have a floor plan that has a view template on it. Now, I'm not going to go to a new view to go find the room separator lines. I just want to find them in this view. So I'm going to enable my temporary view properties, which then frees up my ability to hit the VV command, and then they're under lines. And room separator lines are in the line category, which is always, I don't really understand it sometimes, why lines are annotation, but they come through as model categories. But that's Revit's thing. So if I click that and turn room separator lines on, and you can't see them. So if I then come here and say room separator line, you can see it's drawing the line here. And then I can do this and say isolate category. And so there are all the room separator lines in the project. And this helps me understand, like, okay, what are we doing here? Why are we separating them in different ways? And this can be a reason that you're running into errors, with wall joins or things not really working. I would question why there's two different room separators right here, but it's just a way that you can begin to understand how the model is set up. Now, when I'm done with this and I'm like, I don't want this line to be there, and I'm not going to mess with their model. I'm just going to restore view properties, and it's going to snap it back into place. And then I'm going to reset my temporary, my isolate category, and it's back to where I was. So it's a great way to the room separator lines are not things we want to see. We don't really want to see that extra line there that's separating those places out, but they are helpful to be able to separate spaces that are very open, as in like this big space, that this is a separate room than that. So one of the things too, like that I just showed you were, hey, this is a room here, and all I'm doing is like kind of hovering over the space, and then it'll kind of grab the room crosshairs as I kind of find different spaces. If you're not getting it and you're kind of like, where's the room? You can kind of just press tab and be able to like find that spot. Now in this case, I have a room here, but then it's not tagged. You can do RT or come back here to tag room and then do the bar lounge. And so that's just like that room is there. It is already identified, and I can just go in there, add the tag, and then move about your way. Revit also has this ability to find what's not tagged and then to tag that thing. So that's another thing to be able to say like, hey, I've got this partially tagged plan. It'll go and tag everything that's not currently tagged. So these are really cool, efficient, automated ways that we can work through processes without having to feel like, oh, I have to go through and like click, 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 and like, did I get everything kind of? So really try to like lean on trying to do stuff like that and not doing things as manually as maybe we would have done in the past. But and Joe, what was the last thing you mentioned? The
I think you covered them all.
okay.
You got them.
That is kind of where we're at. So does anyone have any more questions, comments, philosophies on life about Revit and how we can sort of grow our efficiencies and understand like what we can do? Like I can easily say like, hey, come to kitchen, I've got 2,700 square feet of kitchen space. Like, I don't have to do an area. I don't have to like go through and click and do it like a, it's just, it's trying to think of how to use the tool. While it may not be something I'm actively using, I can use what's there to kind of help me understand the process and kind of the lift that I need to be able to say to the kitchen consultant, hey, I've got a 2,700 foot unit. And then if I were to say like, that's actually going to be 2 rooms because this is going to be the walk-in here. It'll split that. So now the room is here, and then I can put another room here and say, this is walk-in. And then my walk-in is 759. So this really quick ways of being able to split the building up and to begin to start understanding what the different spaces are as you begin to start designing. So that's it. Thanks for joining. I'll see y'all at 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thanks,
Mhm.
Kurt.
Thanks,
Yep.
Kurt.
Thank you.